Good morning, members. Time to start the meeting. I declare that we have a quorum, so we'll start the meeting. First of all, I would like to thank you for your support so that I can continue to chair the Public Works Subcommittee. I believe that there will be quite a large number of items for our deliberation. I'm grateful to Mr. Chen Hanpeng for taking up the deputy chairmanship so that we can chair the meetings together. Well, for today's meeting, for the first item, this is to consider the late membership application from Mr. Adrian, and the letter has been sent out to members. It's dated the 13th of January, and it has been updated to the website of the LegCo on the 15th, PWSC 5/2025-01. In accordance with paragraph 4A of the PWSC procedure, as to whether the application for late membership from a member should be accepted will be decided by the subcommittee itself. So in relation to Mr. Ho's application, any comments? Do you have other points to make? If not, I believe that all of you would agree to Mr. Ho's application. So let's welcome Mr. Ho, our new member. Next, we have got two items on our agenda requiring our discussion. The first is about the provision for Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations in 2025-26 regarding to the different heads of expenditure. Another paper is about the proposal to upgrade two projects to Category A. In total, a sum of $42.984 billion will be involved. I would like to remind members, if you have direct or indirect pecuniary interest regarding the discussion items today, please, in accordance with the requirements under Rule 83A of our Rules of Procedure, disclose the nature of the relevant interest before you speak. I draw your attention to the provisions under Rule 84 of the ROP in relation to the voting in matters that you have direct pecuniary interest. Item 1 on the agenda, or the first discussion item, provision for Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations 2025-26. Please take a look at paper PWSC 2024-25-17. It proposes to ask for a total allocation of $41.6158 billion for 2025 for the block allocations under the Capital Works Reserve Fund, CWRF. The administration on the 22nd of November, 9th of December, and 18th of December 2024, respectively, consulted the views of the panel on transport, the panel on information technology and broadcasting, as well as the panel on development. Members were in support of submitting this item to this subcommittee. And as to the main points of the discussion of the respective panels, they have already been sent out to members via email on this 20th of January 2025. On the 15th of January 2025, a full list of items proposed to be funded by the Capital Works Reserve Fund block allocations for 2025-26 has been provided by the administration to the subcommittee. Please refer to paper PWSC 5/2025-02. In attendance to answer questions from members, we have got the controllers for the respective heads of expenditure or their representatives. The list of attending officers has been uploaded to our website. There are too many of them, so I won't go over the names one by one. I would just want to say that I welcome the public officers who are in attendance. Please indicate your request to speak. Let me read out the names. 13 of you, including Mr. Lam Chen-sing, Mr. Lo Wai-kwok, Ms. Chen Yut-ming, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Mr. Lee Chen-keung, Mr. An Men-yu, Mr. Chen Han-peng, Mr. Chu Kwok-keung, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Stanley Lee, Ms. Lilian Kwok, Ms. Jovi Chen, as well as Mr. Chen Hock-fung. First of all, Mr. Lam Chen-sing, 4 minutes covering both your question as well as the answer. Indeed, Chair, thank you. We have a discussion of this item every year. So many small projects are lumped together for our discussion and approval. We may not need to go over them in great details. But then let me ask a broader question in relation to development of projects as well as their financial arrangements. Well, indeed, we are caught in a dilemma. On the one hand, we are faced with the financial or budget deficit of the administration. We should try to make savings wherever we can and try to avoid taking up projects that can wait. But at the same time, the construction industry is facing a lot of challenges. In the private sector, the number of projects has been reduced greatly. Many frontline workers, many employees in that industry are facing huge difficulties. So if we are to further cut drastically the public works projects, I'm afraid this will deal a great role to the construction industry, like the contractors as well as their workers, and the impact will just grow. Let me come to my question. At last year's budget discussion, we were told that the administration did prioritize the projects. Today, we have got the paper on block allocations. I just want to know whether that has already been reviewed and you have already compressed the number of projects. But then would that impact upon the construction industry? Well, we do have financial deficits. On the other hand, we want to launch projects so as to minimize the impact on the construction industry. I just want to know how a balance can be achieved. And then for head 701, subhead 7100CX, that's about new town developments like Marshall Long as well as the investigation concerning the Outtown May University Town. You do have my support, but then of course we need to look at the case of Khao Yi Chow Link. There is the Island West Khao Yi Chow Link as well as the Northeast Land Town Link. They are related to the artificial islands on Khao Yi Chow. Well, earlier on, the administration told us that for the time being, we don't have a timetable for the Khao Yi Chow project, depending on the financial position of the government. So I just wonder whether there's a need for the two items, or should we rather focus on the Northern Metropolis, and then before we move on to the Khao Yi Chow link. Will you take up the question? Yes, please. Sorry, speaker is off mic. Sorry, the speaker is off mic. Yes, please switch on the microphone for the public officer involved. Sorry about that. Yes, please switch on the mic for her. Yes, thank you. Well, in the light of the recent financial positions of the government, we have been very rigorous in reviewing the need for the project. When we look at the allocation requested in the year 25-26, it would be $14.2 billion. Last year, it was $14.3 billion, so a slight decrease of 0.5%. Well, in fact, we have always been talking about 13 or 14 billion dollars, so the levels are more or less the same. What we want to achieve is to make sure that we have got sufficient money for the government departments to respond to the needs of the district and to facilitate the departmental operation. For the request for $14.27 billion, 85% are for ongoing projects. For new projects, well, in fact, we have been even more vigorous in our examination before we included them or prioritized them. So for new items, in the past, in the year 2022-23, it was $3.7 billion. For this year, it will be $2.5 billion. So we are trying to be prudent and try to limit ourselves to items that are indispensable. As to whether there is a scope to make further savings, let me invite the Development Bureau to talk more about cost control. Yes, please. Permanent Secretary. Thank you, Chair. Well, for construction costs, we looked at 4 areas where we can explore feasibility of further savings. In fact, at a meeting of a subcommittee of the LegCo, we gave an account for that. Say, for example, technology, streamlining the procedures, and then we can rely on standardization, and we can also look at the procurement practices. So we have been working on that. Let me supplement a point under the CWRF. For the works-related projects, most of them are minor projects. For the year 25-26, $14 billion, covering 11,000 projects. Some of them are works projects, some of them are advanced works projects. And for new projects, there are about 2,000 in the coming year. Many of them would be related to SMEs, so small and medium contractors can bid for such products. For those costing $10 million, well, in fact, they account for the majority of the 11,000 projects. Therefore, for small and medium contractors, I'm sure they will get some jobs from this exercise. It can help. Chair, if you allow, let me also supplement on the question concerning Khao Yi Chau. The member talked about the Khao Yi Chau link, and in fact, we did say that for Khao Yi Chau, in fact, it is an active one, and towards the end of last year, we started the statutory environmental impact assessment process, and then an EIA report has been submitted to the EPD for its scrutiny. It will be followed by a large amount of work before we can proceed to the construction phase. Well, currently, of course, for the Northern Metropolis vis-a-vis the Khao Yi Chau, the Northern Metropolis will be given priority, so our resources will focus on that. But still, we are going to work on the necessary advanced work for Khao Yi Chau. Therefore, under the Capital Works Reserve Fund, we need to spend money on that. And then there are 2 other projects, and I hope my colleague can supplement on that. We need to work on them as to when we are going to go to the site and start construction. Well, it is a sort of different aspect. We need to get ourselves ready. We have to be ready with the advanced works. And then in future, depending on the fiscal position of the government and depending on the priorities of all the projects, then in good time and in due course, we will embark on that. Maybe the CDD can also supplement. Would it be Mr. Ma?
Thank you, Chairman. Let me supplement. For the 2 projects mentioned by Mr. Lam on the Lantau Island, Northern Lantau to Khao Yi Chau link, and the other Khao Yi Chau link are all in the advanced design process. So that would lead into the Northeast Lantau and it would be a detailed design. The other, the fourth cross harbor tunnel would also leading to Lantau would also need advanced works in design. As the PS said, we will first need to complete the advanced work before we can move on to the next stage, as we will need to understand the design data before we can start our construction. Next, Dr. Loy Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. The government is requesting us to approve quite a large allocation, 41.6 billion. For land acquisition, it's 24.8 billion, which is actually similar to the allocation for last year. The other is the computerization part, which this year it's 2.5 billion, which is also an increase from last year. Why is there such a high cost for land acquisition? Well, I understand that there is Northern Metropolis and that we are resuming land, and therefore we would need to allocate more funding to that area. My question is that last year, the land acquisition allocation was 24.8 billion. How much was actually used? Well, I know this is only as a reserve fund. I want to know exactly how much has been spent last year. For works-related block allocations, it's 14.2 billion, which is actually a bit less from last year. The PS has explained that the CWRF also covers minor works, about 10,000 of such minor works. We're talking about works of about 1 million or less each time. Well, should we actually allocate more resources to the major works? Major works are needed for the future use of Hong Kong. However, minor works are also very essential because they are in relation to public benefits. I've seen from the paper that there would also be job opportunities, and we're talking about 210,000 man-months. That is very important to the construction sector. During the filibustering years, the CWRF was always put on hold because many of the approvals were delayed and postponed, and the sector was very frustrated. The block allocation is actually very important to the construction sector. We really need to look back at history. It was a very painful period for our sector, and we must ensure that minor works be supported as much as possible. Please address my question on land acquisition. As Dr. Low pointed out, we are looking into many different kinds of works in different scale and sizes. You may think that the total sum is high, but some are continuous projects, And the government must be a strict gatekeeper on finances. May I ask Ms. Chen to address the question from Dr. Low? For the compensation and ex gratia payments, then it has to be approved before we can take it through. Well, we can see that Hong Shui Kill Village and also Kutong North projects have been adjusted. So in 2024 to 2024, land resumption was about 17.8 billion in cost. Would someone like to also explain this further? Well, last year we approved this fund. What if there is surplus from the projects? Actually, this is actually a budget, and that there is a cap for this subhead. We're not going to waste the excess resources. Actually, perhaps my colleague can tell us more about the process in land title review and the budget, even though it was about 20 billion. Can my colleague also explain this further on the processes following the budget allocation? Well, we do hope that the Lands Department could speed up the process, but then some of it has to do with land title or governance, and there may be issues over the process. Thank you, Chairman. Well, every year we would look into the eligibility and to see whether the compensation and ex gratia allowances are accepted, or actually the owner of the land title may need a longer time. We do hope to give out the compensation as soon as possible. Even though it is not accepted, we would still want to give out the allowances to try to minimize the impact on the affected residents. Thank you. Ms. Chen Yutming. Thank you, Chairman. I speak in support of the total allocation of the Capital Works Reserve Fund. Well, half of the fund will be used on land acquisition, on public housing, and the development of Northern Metropolis. The government has been issuing bonds, and 17.7 billion bonds have been issued. There is also silver bonds being issued, and the media has pointed, or the government has pointed out in the media briefing that profits from the silver bonds issuance would be also be used. Are we actually going to use part of these profits in some of the individual projects? Second question is that, well, for the Capital Works bonds, it's actually funds raised is actually lower than the expected 20 billion, and that it's estimated that there would be a deficit in our budget of around 100 billion. Would there be other measures taken by the government to ensure that there would be enough funds for the Northern Metropolis projects? DS. On bonds issuance, the Financial Secretary said that it is actually for the investment in public infrastructure, and we would actually use these proceeds for capital works projects. For example, on land acquisition and computerization would not actually be using funding from that. would more bonds be issued in the future is not part of our discussion today, and I do not have information on that at the moment. I can only say that we do have enough funding under the CWRF to support our infrastructure works. Mr. Chen Siu-hong, we see that the total allocation seat is 41.6 billion, out of which it would cover thousands of projects, many of which are minor or medium-sized projects, and it covers land acquisition, computerization, and excluding these, we're talking about the remaining of about 14 billion. Or there are two major projects, part of which have already been approved earlier, and as these are continuous projects, some of them would be under the funding for 2025 and 2026. I'd like to commend the government for including all the important details in the paper. And have also given us a table to see the comparison in allocation approved for 2024 to 25 and 2025 to 2026, and shown us the changes in figures. It can help us have a better understanding of the allocation. As we are now facing a deficit, there might be a need to try to use only what is needed. Many of the projects are actually minor works that could not be delayed, as these are relevant to the public. We should be very prudent to try to save cost as much as possible, and I'm sure that the government is working hard on that. When I was looking through the projects, I found a couple of questions I would like to see addressed. First, it's the head 705 on landslip preventive measures, that the estimate for this year would be 1.3 billion. But it's not very clear why under phase 1 there's actually contract 1, 2, and 3, and then some of it is actually on Kowloon, some on New Territories East. Can you give us more details in how the project descriptions are? And I see that there is a new proposed item on a conservation project. And so if you break the projects up, it's around 20 million or 30 million. But when we're talking about conservation, should you actually put it under one project and not divide up into two projects? Is there a reason for doing that? And last, on head 710, subhead 7100GX, on the digital policy office on spending 20 million. And then there's also a rehabilitation center project on disability registration. Why can that not be covered by the digital policy office? All right, there are a few questions regarding different departments. May I first invite the CEDD, Mr. Ma, to take the first question. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. So, on landslip preventive measures, every year we do have an indicator. So each year we would try to fix about 150 man-made slopes and then to look into 30 natural slopes to assess the hazards, and then we would then push this forward by district. And every year we will need to meet these goals. Chairman, I'd like to follow up. I understand there is a reason for breaking these projects down, but when we just look at the project description, we really don't know what you're talking about, and that would be difficult for us to assess the project. We don't understand how you're breaking this down. If you can actually make the project description a bit more detailed, then it would help us in our understanding.
Well, please elaborate on that. I think the amount of money involved is huge, but then it's a matter of phasing over the expenditures. A project may spend over a year, so please elaborate on this. Maybe your contract is such that it has got stage 1 and stage 2, etc. Right? Thank you, Chair. Well, earlier on, when we look at the title of the project, we will sort of name it by the year involved. So that was a previous practice, but the members thought that it would not be that clear. So for the year 2024-25 onwards, we name the projects by incorporating the relevant district. So we have packages of landslip prevention programs by district, and then in this way we try to sort of organize the sequence of the projects. If members have any queries, we are happy to take up the matter with Mr. Chen, and then we can try to rationalize the arrangements. Mr. Chen. Well, it's easy, Chair. You have to sort of elaborate on what is involved for, say, projects for Kowloon East. You do have a few items under Kowloon East, so we just wonder whether we're talking a single project being split into a few items or whether they are actually about different areas. Yes, please consider his proposal. Computerization. Or rather the Sheung Country Park. So FCD, please. Yes, regarding Sheung Redoubt, let me explain the question about Sheung Country Park. Earlier on, we asked consultants to look into ways to enhance the facilities of the country parks. Sheung Country Park, in particular, Sheung Redoubt has been popular with the tourists, but then conditions as well as the structures are doubtful as to whether they can be retained and whether they are safe enough for tourists or visitors to go in. Now, there are two suggestions. First of all, regarding the structure of the redoubt, we need to investigate into them. If necessary, we have to stabilize them, and we should also have some historical relics available for display. On the other hand, consultants also said that in addition to the redoubt itself, in fact the area where it is situated can be enhanced by providing a guided tour to the visitors. We're talking about a mini museum, quite unlike the conventional one, so that when there is bad weather or when we can have, say for example, when the weather is bad, we can rely on VR to allow visitors to have a taste of the history as well as the background of Sheung Reservoir. We believe that it is a very good idea, but then there are different elements involved, like play elements, museums, designs for the exhibits, and then we also need structural works, and we need to revitalize the redoubt. So we believe that there are two different paths for the redoubt. We may have to work on it on a longer term basis to sort of stabilize the structure. But then the Center for Historical Relics Interpretation, which is similar to a museum, the idea can be taken up earlier. Who else would like to supplement to the question? Mr. I. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your questions. He referred to 2 items. That is enhancement of consented data exchange gateway to support smart and facilitate exchange of common data within government digital policy office. Another one pertaining to the issuance of ID cards for the people with disabilities. That's for the SWD or the LWB. We try to have central services and we try to standardize the services so that departments can interface with the modules, and then in this way departments can smoothly deliver the service. For the consented data exchange gateway, the basic elements have been launched and available to departments for use. But then for the current project, it is quite complicated. That's in relation to the collection of addresses and storage of addresses among departments. The practices vary, and then citizens may have different habits. For room 2005, some would say I'm living in room 5 on the 20th floor instead of talking about room 2005. So we need verification. So this is a complex project. We're going to rely on AI to try to sort out such complex issues. We try to match the addresses provided by the citizens so the departments can exchange the data, and then we can move forward with our project concerning a digital government. This will be good because we need to verify the information submitted by citizens in their application forms. So we would like to have standardized interfaces to facilitate usage by governments, departments. For the LWB's module, we have already got the consented data exchange. We've also got the blockchain element. We have been issuing e-certificates so that verification can be done among departments. Now, what we want to do now is to face the public. We would like to rely on I'm Smart so that citizens can have a one-stop service in the digital government. So we have already got a module to carry this out. What happens in future is that citizens can, via I'm Smart, look at their e-proof or the e-certificates. And for the registration card for PWDs, they can be shown to whatever parties that require the proof. Next, Mr. Lee Chen Kang. Thank you, Chair. Now we are talking about $43 billion worth of projects. Many of us have the same question in mind. We have a financial deficit. Are we spending the money properly? We need to be a gatekeeper when it comes to the use of public money. And we wonder whether all the projects are all urgently required or whether some of them can be put on hold for a while. So when it comes to the prioritization of the projects, did you go through the priorities? Can some of them wait? And then, when you prepare the project estimates, how did you arrive at the figures needed? I can share my point with you by using some examples, like Head 703. 3 refuse collection points are to be constructed. Construction or reprovisioning or redevelopment. They would all need $40 million each. Why is it so? Is it because of the scale of the projects? If you need to construct a new one, probably it will be more expensive than reprovisioning. How come that they all cost $40 million? Is it really that urgent to reprovision an existing one? Another question is about 708, Head 708, 8100, canopies. are to be built. And then what about labs, offices, etc.? All of them cost the same, $20 million. So I just wonder whether a canopy would cost the same as the money needed to build a lab, etc. So we lack details to facilitate meaningful comments for you. And then for the DSD as well as the CEDD, you have Head 705 about landslip prevention programs. But then under Head 709, again we have got improvement works for 13 slopes. Even though it would only cost us $18 million, how come that they don't come under the long-term landslip prevention program? So please elaborate. And then there is a last question. I just wonder whether you should really pay so much for a project like Head 710. You are going to spend $7 million to register the supervisors for school management committees. I think we can simply use Google Forms, right? And then for the Education Bureau, I know they have to construct a large number of lifts. Under Head 708, we have got a large number of lift installation projects. Are they necessary? Are they urgent? Thank you. Ms. Law would like to have an overall comment. Well, each and every controller has to prioritize the projects within their own head of expenditure. I think I have touched on that earlier on. Well, in fact, we have already seen a greater need to prioritize the projects because of the smaller amount. All of them are of small amounts and they are needed on the ground, they're needed by the relevant districts. Maybe first of all, Head 703, the SD can tell us how they prioritize the projects. And then the CDD as well as the Digital Policy Office can also comment. Yes, prioritization. I think the projects are needed, urgent, cost-effective, and they are needed for safety and hygiene rationales. Now, it was said that 3 RCPs would cost more or less the same, but then as a result of their size, each would require $40 million. What about school premises? Would you take up that question? I just cannot understand why reprovisioning and construction of new one would all cost the same, $40 million. Well, you need to house a refuse collection vehicle, and then it has to turn around within the RCP, so it would cost more or less the same to provide for an RCP. CDD. Well, for the landslip prevention program, well, we do have a selection mechanism. It is based on risk, and then we'll try to identify high-risk slopes, and then they will be included. And then we have an annual target. I think the member referred to the projects under the WSD. For our landslip preventive measures, we are looking at high-risk projects. The individual departments have also got their own slopes to look after, and they also have to carry out day-to-day care and maintenance work. So I think we are talking about preventive measures, and they will be taken up by different departments. All right, the Digital Policy Office. Thank you for your questions. He asked about the question concerning the Education Bureau, that is a registration system for the supervisors of school management committees. It isn't just it isn't as simple as Google Forms. We would like to have it online. Other than making a submission online, you can also tie in with I'm Smart. If you need to supplement information, then the platform will send out e-notifications to the applicants as to what further information would be needed. And then the approval process would also be electronic. There won't be any hard copies to be issued. $7.11 million will be needed. Well, as to the amount needed, we haven't given the formal approval. In the future, there will be a team of officers who will vet the various items vigorously, like the timetable, the items to be included, etc. So that's about the school manager registration platform of the Education Bureau. What we want to achieve is to have the optimal results. We'll check whether we really need that amount of money. So if I may supplement a point, in the past we have even got cases being turned down by us, and then quite a large number of them have seen the amount of money requested being cut by us.
The Digital Policy Office will act as a strict gatekeeper. Mr. Fan from the Education Bureau. Oh, no, Mr. Lee? Oh, thank you. I'm Mr. Leung. Oh, I'd like to address the question on air conditioning, on the maintenance, and also on the performance venue for Lingnan University. Our member wants to know how we can actually control cost and make the estimates. I'd like to first talk about actually on the air conditioning and canopies of the Baptist University, where we're talking about 1,600 dormitory rooms of about 27 stories high. So that actually leads to a safety issue because some of the air conditioning structure and some of the cement on the canopies are very dilapidated, as there are many students living there, and pedestrians would walk under those canopies. It does have a hazard that needs to be considered. And on Lingnam's University development, it's actually a empty space at the moment. We want to build it into a performance venue with an open skylight with seats provided, and there would also be wireless facilities. Of course, I think members are most concerned with whether money is well spent. Please be rest assured, because the UGC would then, based on the consultancy of the buildings department, would then come up with the best assessment and a more detailed design. We would comply with all the building requirements and meet standards on what projects could be subsidized. We do have standards on that, and we'll be able to ensure that all projects are actually up to standards and money well spent. Our members asked about whether the lifts would need to be reprovisioned, and that depends on the years used. We would collect data on the lifts and look into the frequency of suspended services before we come to a decision. Thank you, Mr. Leung. Next, Dr. Ngan Men Yu. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'd like to try to understand a bit more about Head 707, Subhead 7100CX on the East Kowloon research. One is on the East Kowloon Promenade, on what the actual site is, how many years would be needed, and whether we are talking about what would happen after the research and what the next step would be. And also on Hong Kong Island, this year from Kennedy Town to Shau K1, there would also be a harbourfront trail. When would actually they see that happen on Kowloon, that we could the promenade could actually reach Yau Tong? When would the government actually be determined to open up the promenade for the Kowloon harbourfront? CEDD. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Dr. An, for your question. Well, the CEDD is leading this project on the investigation study that would cover To Kwan, Chao Kong Lang, Kai Tak, and Yau Tong. We've always been trying to open up the promenade across the harbour front. For the East Kowloon harbour front, as there are parts of the areas that due to certain reasons could not be connected, we are currently going to study on feasible options to try to connect the entire harbour front. We are not going to reclaim land. We will try to come up with other feasible options. When there is to be amendment made to be protection of harbour front ordinance, then we would also look into possible options to link up the entire East Kowloon harbourfront. Chairman, I want to know how long this study would take. Mr. Ma? We estimate that the study would take about a year or two, a year and a half. And then we would also conduct a public consultation after the study. We think that we would begin the study mid-year this year, and then it will be completed around 2027, and then we would by then have consulted the public, including the district councils. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chan Han Pen. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to talk about Head 706-6100TX and 6101TX. I've always been very concerned with the a new roadway linking from the West Harbour Tunnel exit. According to my understanding, it was directly taken upon this time without engaging in consultation. Well, I believe that this is a right way forward, because for some of the works, we really don't need to engage consultants, because we could then save some money. And then I'm a bit disappointed because 6101TX is on minor works in maintaining the roads, and there has been a cut of 10% this year. We do hope that more could be done in the maintenance of bridges and ways. One is on Cheung Wing Road. This is actually a staircase next to the slope, and this project should be taken upon as soon as possible, but with the reduction in funding for this subhead, it could not be done. This project has been delayed for over 10 years. When the XRL was being built, a commitment was made to the residents there to build a staircase by the slope. But then it was not done. So it's been 15 years since then. We've been trying to fight for this staircase, and the administration continues to delay it, saying that this would be explored. And another project under Highways Department, it's 6101TX. There's an increase of 20% here. So one has been cut by 10% for highway works, and the one for 6101TX has actually been increased by 20%. I'm sure that we could have these necessary staircases built. Could you consider not cutting funding for these minor works? Otherwise, I would continue to be disappointed. I'd also like to touch on what other members have mentioned on Head 708, Subhead 8100EX on alterations and improvements to the campuses of UGC-funded institutions, that UGC wants addition on improvements to labs, and so that's basically, and a lot of it is called spatial reorganization, which means that you're doing renovation works. Well, universities actually have their own funds. We're talking about 1 billion within 2 years to be allocated to such improvements. Can actually the universities handle this themselves without having to ask for money from the Finance Committee? Well, can you give me more description on what you mean by spatial reorganization? Ms. Ho, on 6100TX, on the priority for the projects. Well, of course, all the projects have been weighed in terms of importance. On the particular work mentioned by Mr. Chan, perhaps I could defer your question to the Highways Department. Thank you. There is minor works under 6101 on the staircase near Yaoma. Well, I would just try to touch on this briefly. We have looked at the area, and it is feasible to build a staircase, but under new regulations, the government would need to consider universal accessibility. Otherwise, wheelchair users will not be able to use this staircase. We are continuing with our study. It would be very expensive to install a lift. We are looking at different options to see whether we could provide some sort of ramps. I believe we will be able to put this forward as soon as possible if we do not need to install a lift, as that would be too expensive. This is only an estimate. We do have our priority on the projects. Of course, we want all the projects to be taken through, but some of the projects, due to certain reasons, maybe if you want to build a road, but then there may be other works being done at the moment, then the roads may need to be delayed and postponed, and we might bring other urgent projects forward. This is only an estimate, and we would make adjustments as needed. We would also look into the cost efficiency, and we might adjust the priority of the project. So this has always been what we are doing. Be rest assured we're working hard on that. Well, you were going to try to complete all the projects. So when do you believe it be a mature time to approve such a staircase? I know that it would depend on resources. The financial secretary has committed it to be about 90 billion. many of the projects have actually been introduced years ago. Do you have an actual timetable to try to fight for more resources to have all these projects completed?
Regarding the item mentioned by Mr. Chen, well, we are almost ready, pending confirmation with the Transport Department that we can build a ramp for the wheelchairs. And then if we only have to construct the staircases, then it will be quick. Well, they have been living there for decades. Without a ramp, it will be difficult for them to move around. It takes them 15 minutes to take a bus. If you have a staircase for them, it is a journey of 3 minutes. So they don't actually hope for a lift. In the beginning, they were promised to be given a lift. Well, a metal structure would be fine. They don't mind. So as long as you can give them a quicker access, then it will be fine. For the elderly, well, unless you give them a lift, a metal staircase won't help them. But well, I think we are all being sort of realistic. We are merely asking for a metal structure. If you have spare resources, and if the Treasury can provide for it next year, it will be good. Now you're cutting it by 10%, so many projects will be delayed and affected. Well, I think the Highways Department was saying that they were almost ready, so maybe it is a matter of a few more months waiting time before they can get the resources. As the Deputy Chair has said, they've been waiting for it for over a decade. Next, what about the UGC? Mr. Leung, please, regarding the spatial reorganization. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Well, under subhead 8100EX, a lot of them pertain to spatial reorganization, and you would like to have an elaboration. Let me explain by way of examples. Well, for the ongoing key items, for the first one is at CU Hong Kong, spatial reorganization and provision of teaching laboratories at Lee Shau Key Architecture Building. So within the Lee Shau Key architecture building, we are going to have an extra floor so that lecture halls and classrooms can be located on the additional floor to be built on the roof. It is because the ground floor is very useful. It can be load bearing. So by relocating the facilities to the top floor, then we can move the heavier plants on the ground floor, which are load bearing. So model production units, large scale printing machines can all be housed elsewhere. And then as to the sixth item, that is the spatial reorganization and renovation works for laboratory space on the 6th floor at Zone J of Hong Kong UST. It's the life science school. It has been in use for 30 years since day one. In the past, we used to have individual rooms to be used by individual groups, which are small in size. Now, on this occasion, we want to have an open floor sort of design. In this way, we can facilitate collaboration among different groups. They are small in size, and then the number of researchers that can be accommodated will increase substantially, so that we can encourage the researchers to have closer cooperation. And in fact, currently for R&D, we would like to have collaboration, and this means that there is a change in the ecology of R&D. And then for proposed new items, we say that we would like to have spatial reorganization of University Concourse at Yeung Kin Man Academic Building, City U. If you have ever been to City U, that's the most important access. As soon as you move up the escalator, then you will see this building. It has got 18 classrooms and a lecture hall accommodating 2,000 students, and the pedestrian flow is heavy. We would like to turn Hong Kong into an international education hub. So it is a very busy and crowded area. So we would like to have spatial reorganization. We have currently got plant rooms, etc. They will be reprovisioned elsewhere. Students don't actually have sufficient space, would like to widen the passageway, and would like to have landscaping. Well, in fact, the CityU has not had any major renovations since day one. It has got a history of over 30 years. So we'd like to tie in with the development of CityU. Well, in fact, CityU is also within the top 100 universities worldwide. So we would like to carry out enhancement to CityU. So for spatial reorganization, the term may be the same, but then in fact for different universities, it would mean a different sort of aspect of the works. I want to know whether universities themselves can pick up the bill, or must we sort of pay for it? I think you have overrun your time limit, so please be brief. For 8100EX for this year, we have seen a downward adjustment. Of course, universities have got resources on their own, but then they are UGC-funded institutions. The government is still bound to provide resources to support them. I know that universities have also deploy their own resources to carry out improvement projects, so it's a matter of cooperation. Would you like to get a list of items funded by the universities themselves? If they can, I don't mind. So in this way, they can show that universities are also funding their own projects as well. Next, Mr. Chi Kwan. Thank you, Chair. Let me declare I'm the chair of the alumni of Hong Kong U for Head 701 1004CA. That's about land acquisition. So that at Tai Po Tung Chi, we can sort of reprovision the sports center of the Education University. You have my support. Well, in fact, for the green belt at Dongji, near Education University, for years the landowner has been using it for car repair, storage, etc. Well, in fact, it is harmful to the natural environment there. So by having this project, I'm sure the Education University staff and students can make good use of a sports center which is nearer to their campus. And then in relation to the land resumption process, how long would it take, and what about the amount of money involved? And then Head 708 8100QX, and that's about school premises. I think on this occasion, the administration has revised upwards, revised the ceiling of the projects. I mean the amount of money involved. In other words, each school will get a larger sum, and then the authority will be ever more vigorous. We are afraid that the school premises will not be given the kind of care and maintenance needed, because the government might be very strict in granting approval. I think you need to be pragmatic. You mustn't try to think of making savings in this regard, because we need to prioritize safety. And then we have heard in the media that last year over 10 schools were not able to beat the deadline for building inspection or window inspection. We are afraid that there may be accidents arising from concrete spalling, etc. So have you followed up on the risk of demolition and clearance? Yes, please go answer the first question. Yes, for the Tongchi Sports Center of the Education University of Hong Kong, 3.6 hectares of land would be involved. So we have been making an estimate in relation to the amount of compensation needed. You have to tie in with the progress of the works department. So we are sort of echoing their timetable of land resumption and works progress. What about the other questions concerning the educational sector? Would it be the Education Bureau or the UGC? Mr. Fan from the Education Bureau. Thank you. Starting from September, we have revised the minimum amount for school premise maintenance. Well, $8,000 or above would be schools, $3,000 or above for special schools. Now it has been revised to $10,000 and $6,000 respectively. The first for secondary and primary schools, the second for special schools. We did understand how many projects will be affected. As of end of October, only 30 projects were involved, amounting to $100,000. In other words, they are small items, minor items, and we believe that schools are in a position to handle them themselves. And of course, we'll keep an eye on that to see whether we need to further revise the limits. As to the window inspection and building inspection, since the year 2021, we have been carrying that out for schools so as to help with school maintenance. There were media stories saying that the buildings department sent out notices to schools asking them to comply with the repair orders. We do take it seriously. Regarding the dozen or so compliance orders, we have taken up the cases with the schools. All the repair work has been carried out, and we have informed the BD accordingly. Mr. Andrew Lam, the first one is about the approach. The other two are questions. We do know that we have got a financial deficit. Colleagues have asked the question, and the public officers have given an answer. As far as the CWRF is concerned, we are talking about a large number of livelihood-related minor projects. Well, we have to be careful about large value projects, but then for the smaller ones which are needed for livelihood, the ongoing ones must be sort of completed, and for the new ones we should look at the design, etc., to see if we can reduce the amount of money needed. It doesn't mean that we should carve off some of them. It is a matter of squeezing more into the scope and carrying them out at a faster pace. Now come to my questions. 701 7CX. First of all, 701 7CX. This is to provide support it is said that you're not going to apply for money for new projects this year. What does it mean? Does it mean that you're not going to do it, or whether you're going to postpone them? And then for X001EX, it is said that as a result of adjustments of the priorities, there has been a reduction in the amount of money needed. So what do you mean by adjusting the priorities? What do you mean? Does it mean that some of the projects have been taken off the list? And what items are we talking about?
政事務總署阿陳
Miss Chan? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question. On 7100CX subhead on this is actually announced in the policy address in 2023, and actually in the 18 districts we have already promoted 27 projects, and so this has been completed and there's no need for further fund allocation. Our chairman, well, since it has been completed, well, this sort of detail on the signature project scheme will actually mislead us, right? It has been completed, Ms. Chen? Yes, all projects have been completed. And the allocation has been approved by the Finance Committee, and we do not need to come to the LegCo for further funding approval. Well, since it has been completed, or do you actually should you actually clarify it in the paper? Well, we would actually do that next time. Mr. Leung from UGC. Thank you for your question. On 8100EX, in 2024 to 2025, we're talking about 622 million in funding allocation. And with the total fund, so it's actually a 25% reduction, because this year it's 466 million. We've considered that when the universities are launching projects, we will look at the necessity of these projects. So this is something we would think very important. We believe that some projects are essential. We would assess these projects to see whether it would enhance education. The projects that we have chosen this time would actually bring more spatial reorganization, and that would actually release about 4,810 square meters. And last time, we only released about 2,000 square meters in space. So this time we have chosen very carefully to ensure that it would enhance the spatial reorganization and educational development of the campuses. Thank you. Chairman, I'm sure I would like to follow up. Well, actually, my question has not been answered. I want to know what projects have been taken out. His answer only focused on what has been done. There is a difference here. For those that have been taken out at the moment, that would also give me reference as to what would be on the list later on. If you could not provide me with the answer today, please provide supplementary information after. Can you do that? Yes, we could provide supplementary information on what projects have been removed from the list at the moment. Thank you. Mr. Stanley Lee. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we have heard many members ask their questions. We are all very concerned about the deficit at the moment. Out of all these projects, are there any projects that could be consolidated to try to compress the total allocation? Has there been a cross-disciplinary review on the projects? I think I raised this last year as well. I'm not sure whether some of them could have been consolidated. That's my first question. On the second question, on head 703310GX on 3 and 8. Number 3 is actually in my district on the Ma On Shan project. Well, I actually took a look at it a few days ago, and I see that you really need 40 million on that. And then on the Lei Yu Mun public toilet, our public toilets actually are very expensive. Why do you need actually a public toilet that costs tens of millions? I don't think the public would accept that. And then head 705, subhead 5101CX. That is actually 22 million on the study of some of the studies on public works program. I think if you could give 20 million to university for education purposes, that would be very good. But then if you spend 20 million on the feasibility study on sustainable supply and use of concrete, I don't think that's very acceptable. Mr. Lee, the Ma On Shan station, there are two phases, so there would be a waiting area, and there would also be air-conditioned room and benches. So we have discussed this with the transport department. That is the reason why, because we cannot do it do all the refurbishments at the same time, we will need to take it by phases. So that is on the Ma On Shan PTI. For the Lei Yu Mun public toilet, we need to release the site next to the public toilet for future development. There is actually there needs to be a redevelopment. It may seem expensive. We found that there are a lot of pipes and cables underground, and so it would take some time for reprovisioning and refurbishment, and that is the reason for the high price. There is an existing public toilet at the moment, and so there would not be a public impact. On consolidation of projects, CEDD, can you take this question? Mr. Ma, thank you. One of the projects on the sustainable supply of concrete, I'd like to say that we do need a lot of concrete, especially in the northern metropolis development. There would be a high demand for that in the future as well. We're going to review the current concrete supply chain, including the factory locations, the raw material supply, etc. Based on future development, we know that some of the concrete factories would be affected. We're going to continue with studies such as the impact on the environment, on transport, and work on more studies. In our study, we would also explore the possibility of low carbon concrete usage. So there's actually a side product when we make steel products which can be used as a sort of low carbon concrete, and we are assessing whether it could act as a substitute for the current concrete we are using. So that is the reason why we need to do this study. I don't think you're touching on the core of my question. I have pointed out a few projects that are more costly than expected. I have seen the project description, but I don't understand why it needs to reach 20 million. Is it because of high salary costs, or is that going to take a long period of time covering years? Why is it so expensive, Chairman? I have looked at reports on social welfare. LegCo members will be able to take similar reports and outcomes on studies. I'm just not sure whether such an expensive study is worthwhile. Can you provide more information on this project? Well, you have given us a summary, but then you might need a more in-depth study. I'm not sure whether you could provide us with possible locations. You might need to provide us with more information after the meeting to alleviate the concerns of members. And also let us know how much time the study will take. Mr. Lee, as you said, some of the cables on pipes would need to be reprovisioned underground, and that is the reason for the costly public toilet. Well, these are the information members want to see. You really must give us more details to show that the money is to be well spent, as we're all acting as gatekeepers here. I'm not sure who can take the question on cost efficiency of the CEDD. Would be shouldering the majority of the works. Can you give us more details on that? Thank you, Chairman. Well, on the scale and size and details of projects, if we are launching the projects at similar times, we might consolidate the projects. But then it might also be limited, because for major works it might need the support of developers, because there might be procedures and works taken upon by contractors. You can actually speak with the relevant department to ask for more detailed information on consolidation of projects. Let me give you an example. When the next item to be discussed today is actually on the Chun area, there's actually Area 66 in which we would be discussing on. Well, if Area 66 and Area 68 could be combined, I'm sure that the construction cost would be cheaper. However, Area 68 and Area 68, although it's only a road apart, one of it is already being developed. Well, there are a lot of considerations to be made. Well, sometimes we might think that it's too expensive and that we shouldn't push forward the projects altogether. But then some of them may be essential and could not be delayed. We have to consider all the reasons behind it. And if you do have individual concerns, please relay it back to the relevant departments. Ms. Lillian Kwok.
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair has already said, we need to make a judgment as to whether the projects are needed, whether they're necessary. We are acting as gatekeepers. Now, for head 701, 810CX, that is in relation to the UGC funded institutions. Just now we have heard from the UGC that a few factors are involved: safety, learning effectiveness, as well as the laboratories. Now I would like to invigorate our nation through science and technology. Now you are going to make enhancements to the laboratories, etc. I think we need them for our development. So you do have my support. Of course, if a project is needed for safety reasons, then it must be given high priority. But in some cases, you talk about enhancing the classrooms, offices, or the performance venues. Now, my question is, you talked about prioritizing the projects. Now, we are looking at a huge financial deficit. All of us are being anxious. For such projects, I don't think they would directly impact upon student learning. And as long as the status quo can be kept, would you sort of slow it down? And then, as Mr. Chi has said, we have got many primary schools that have got very poor conditions as far as the premises are concerned. They don't have a school hall and they have to share their library with a multi-purpose room. So I think they have a stronger case. And then 8100QX, you have got a large number of renovation projects. I know you have to look at the schedule of accommodation for schools. Well, we have to promote new energy vehicles. We want to have more charging stations. Well, why don't you update the schedule of accommodation for schools? If you don't, then it means that for school premises, we're not able to provide for a charging station. Otherwise, we have to seek approval from a very senior level and get approval school by school. So why don't you sort of update the schedule of accommodation so that you can include that? And then for head 710, and that's about computerization. It is good because we are catching up with the times. You are going to spend $2,520 million. It is a huge sum. Consultants will be engaged to carry out feasibility studies and the design of the systems. How much money will be spent on consultation? And what about the system development? How much will be spent on that? Well, we want to make good use of our technologies. We want to be cost effective. We want to have good value for money. And then we can spare the human resources for other projects like new projects. Now, you are going to have new administrative computers. So please tell us about the savings in terms of money as well as human resources. UGC first, Mr. Leung. Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the member for her questions. First, about the university projects, I would like to thank you for supporting the developments of science-related facilities, including laboratory space. And then as to office accommodation, well, please look at the two tables. First, the ongoing key items. They were selected last year. For the proposed new items, they're for this year. For the office-related projects, they are ongoing key items. For new items, on this occasion, we try to reduce the number here. And then even when we include them, they are just right next door to laboratories, like the one for Hong Kong UST or the spatial extension reorganization. And then for Hong Kong U, we've also got enhancement works for learning space at Library Building Old Wing. And then for the City U, it was first completed in year 1992. So for office accommodation, they are attached to laboratories, etc. So what we aim to do is to give first priority to learning facilities and research facilities, and then last consideration will be given to office only. As to the other projects, like performance venues, as well as the lecture theaters, we paid a site visit. We did so for each and every project. We have to check how run down they are, and then we will look at the details in the proposals. We are a gatekeeper. We will only give approval to inclusion when we are sort of satisfied that they are justified. So we want to have more learning space, and we want to make sure that the premises are safe. So we have been sort of honoring the concepts in the budget. So when departments select the projects, all the principles have been honored. Education Bureau, anything to add in relation to the charging station? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Member, for your question. As to the schedule of accommodation for schools, it is being updated regularly. We'll see if we need to make any changes. Ms. Chen talked about charging stations for new energy vehicles. For new campuses constructed, they have been included. For the schedule of accommodation, we'll try to check if this should be added in due course. Computerization. Mr. Mack, please. Digital Policy Office. Thank you, Ms. Kwan, for her question. If I may try to elaborate on this, I think she referred to the consultants' feasibility studies. I think there's Annex 10. When we talk about the new administrative computer systems, we talk about the scope. That is, departments may include consultancies for feasibility studies. But then from departments, we haven't got any proposals of such a nature. We are merely talking about the ambit. That is, as far as this head is concerned, departments may ask for money for consultancies for feasibility studies. But in fact, departments haven't asked for this year. Ms. Kwok, I'm sorry. Well, in this case, please clarify. The way you word it, we are being misled, thinking that the two items are there. Chair, I have to rebut the Education Bureau. Schedule of accommodation. I've been looking at it for 2 years. They haven't yet included it, so we haven't got charging stations for new energy vehicle. I don't think it's that difficult to add it. If projects can be postponed, then they have been postponed, so they're not urgent. But what about performance venues? Why can't they be postponed as well? Just a proposal, a suggestion for the administration. So the suggestion must have been noted. Next, Ms. Jovi Chen. For items closely related to our livelihood, they would have my support. I think it's more or less the same amount, like $14 billion for Chun Wan rural sewage collection systems in Chun Wan Woyi Hang village. For Chun Wan, we have problems with water quality and odor at the waterfront. You have my support because that project would greatly enhance the water quality in Chun Wan so that we can attract the tourists to visit our waterfront. So you have my support. For the paper itself, you compare the approved estimates for the last year with the proposals for this year. It seems that we have more or less the same amount, $40 billion. But then 2 years back, years 2022, 2023, for CWRF, the administration had a figure of $20 billion in each of those 2 years. Now we have got substantial increase, $41.3 billion. In particular, under head 701 to cater for the Northern Metropolis development with an increase of 200%. For land acquisition, the amount has come down. But then for Head 710, computerization, a huge increase, 18.3%. So even for works-related projects, a cut of 0.5%. But all in all, we have still seen an increase. For Annex 10, we have got the projects itemized, like system development, etc. For system development, of course, you need them. But what about upgrading and enhancement projects? Will some of them be less urgent so that they can be shelved for the time being so that we can exercise some cost control over the overall sum? I'm not on the information and broadcasting policy panel. I think some members queried the effectiveness of such projects. So can I have this followed up? Yes, Digital Policy Office. I'd like to thank the member for her questions. For our tables, we have been talking about system enhancement, etc. Let me explain once again. The projects have not yet been approved. We'll of course look at the case if they are not carried out and whether we can sort of have them postponed. I want to draw your attention to the following information submitted by departments to justify the system enhancement. Some of them have been in use for many years, and some of the modules are no longer supported technically. What it means is that if we have problems with software and hardware, they cannot be repaired or maintained. In other words, the whole system has to be brought down, and then we may not have the security bugs being addressed, and then there will be security patches that would give rise to hazards. But still, we'll be keeping an eye on the necessity of the projects. If they're needed, they will be given the green light, and then even for a project given the green light, we'll see if it can be carried out partially. We did have examples in the past, that is, we did turn down some of the proposals, or we tried to narrow the scope, or we just give priority to the indispensable parts only. So would you also look at the case of manpower savings? Can you sort of tell us about the manpower to be saved by carrying out the projects with a holistic view? Some of them have to do with digital government development. Others are simply enhancement of the system, or some others have to do with information security, while some others, upon completion, would enhance the efficiency. So we'll try to strike a balance. What we want to do is that we only spend money where it is needed, so that we have the best cost control and value for money. For the 20 projects in Annex 10, how much can be saved so that we can prioritize them? And then in the answers given, we are told about the risk of having to suspend the systems, and there are certain safety risks. Can such information be given to us? Can you supplement the information? Yes, we can provide additional information regarding the 20 projects. We are giving a very simple description of the projects. Maybe in the light of the questions asked, we have to seek out the answers from the relevant departments before we can sort of answer your questions. So let's see how much additional information can be given by you. Next, Mr. Chen Hao-feng. A few questions from me. First of all, Head 708 8100QX. I think about a number of projects pertain to repairing secondary school premises. I don't find problem with that. But then among the 10 schools involved, upon completion of the repair works, will such schools be sort of closed? If you promise us that for the time being they won't be closed, then I have ease of mind. But then if in 2 years' time they're to be closed, then I just wonder whether the money should be spent in this way. So among the 10 schools, do they have the risk of having to be closed?
Another question raised by other members on the computerization under Head 710. So we all want to know how we can leverage on computerization to cut down manpower, but it seems that no answer has been given. Can you provide us with supplementary information afterwards on indicators on whether this could be done? Should we request departments to also provide us with the reduction in headcount with computerization? I asked this question last year as well. Well, after computerization, manpower could then be allocated to other departments, but we don't want this to happen. We should actually just cut down the headcount instead of just deploying the extra manpower to other departments, because we are trying to reduce manpower. Otherwise, you are not saving money at all. And I see very obvious this year, although it has happened in past years, that some work seem to be the same project, yet it is separated into different projects. For example, under Head 705, about 14 million on toilet. I'm not objecting to it, but these are actually the same projects. And then on the conservation on Shing Moon Park as well, also the same. For the Northern Metropolis, there is actually a slope consultant, and actually that project is cut down into 3, and each 20 million cost. Are you trying to evade from other procedures and that is the reason for separating these projects up? Education Bureau, Mr. Fan, can you take the first question on education? Thank you. The 10 projects listed here are continuous items from previous years. Each year we would ask the schools to submit their requests, and then we would then choose some to be repaired. Well, you asked whether these schools would be closed down due to lack of students after renovation. Well, these 10 schools are all healthy schools with enough students, and we do not think that this would happen anytime soon. Thank you. Digital Policy Office. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chan, for your question. Each department, in proposing their projects, would need to show whether they could cut down expenses and manpower. And these figures would need to be submitted to us for assessment. Very often, after computerization, savings on manpower and cost would then be deployed to other work or positions. We understand that the departments are seeing more and more heavy workload, and especially in the past 2 years, each department is cutting down manpower. Therefore, in some areas, they do need redeployment to meet the needs of additional workload. Simply put, we would assess the savings on manpower and savings when we assess the projects. Chairman, can you ask them to list out how much manpower and savings have been reduced? Yes, of course. Mr. Ma from CEDD, can you tell us why some of the projects are separated? Thank you. There's actually under 5100 CX, we're talking about some of the works under the Lands Department on improvement works in some areas, and basically they are trying to upgrade their slopes and try to push it forward as one project. Well, there are different sizes in our projects, and we do have to maintain a certain number of slopes each year. And there is a reason for these projects to be separated into phases. Well, you know, if you separate the projects, that actually leads to a higher cost. I'm sure that the Lands Department has considered the technical assessment. Would actually the cost be reduced with consolidating? We are talking about 30 million here. We do need consultants and for projects of certain scale. Therefore, it's just via their usual procedures and work practice. Can you provide us with additional information on this after the meeting and try to consolidate some of the information and then submit it to us? Well, as our appointed ending time is 10:30, I would like to let Mr. Holden Chow and Mr. Stanley Ng to speak and then adjourn the meeting, as we will not be able to complete all the procedures today. Mr. Holden Chow. Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to focus on Head 710 on computerization. Well, looking at the total allocation is about 2 billion. I would like to know more about some individual projects. Well, this is not the first time I am raising this issue. Sometimes we can't really see the urgency of the projects or the cost efficiency of such projects. We may not be so concerned about it when we are not facing such a deficit. Well, under Head 710, there are some ongoing items, there are proposed new items. Well, to open up, to develop a school manager registration platform. Well, as another member said, maybe you could just use a Google form. Why would that need 7 million? And there are new proposed items, such as a centralized security information under Lands Department and a replacement of hardware for departmental security services. That's close to 20 million. I have no idea what kind of a security information system that is. I would like to hear from the administration what that is. And the Department of Health is also looking into implementation of e-inspection for private healthcare facilities. and also on adoption of e-proof. I think that probably, or implementation of digital signing for medical documents, that probably arose from COVID because we would need medical proof. But then, why would you actually need a e-inspection for private healthcare facilities? Can you explain this to us? Why there needs to be such an implementation? We are facing serious financial deficit at the moment. Is there such a urgency in some of the projects? Could you actually try to postpone some of the items that are not so urgent? We may think that some of it looks simple, such as the development of school management registration platform. Well, to us, we might think that an Excel sheet would be more than sufficient. Why would there need to be spending of 7 million? Well, yes, we do need to be gatekeeper for many of the projects, and we need more details on some of the projects. Mr. Mack from the Digital Policy Office, can you address such concerns? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chow, for your question. Well, I would like to reiterate that these projects have not yet been approved. We are going to act as a very strict gatekeeper to ensure that projects to be carried out are really necessary. The implementation of digital signing for medical documents are actually a medical proof for taking leave, and to connect it with Health Connect, e-health. Ms. Jovi Chen also asked a similar question. There are 30-odd offices under the Lands Department, and many of the computer systems are outdated. The maintenance for security would expire this year, and if we do not replace this, then they might be subject to computer hacks. So this is really essential. On the e-inspection for private healthcare facilities under the Department of Health, this can actually enhance e-inspection. That when officers inspect private healthcare facilities, they would bring e-devices to record the data and then input that information when they're back to the office into the system. That would streamline the process, as the inspectors would not need to bring paper and pen to note down the results on site, and this could actually help us to cut down manpower. Of course, we would vet this very prudently before we approve the project. Well, thank you for a clear description on e-inspection. I'd just like to comment on that. If doing this would help you save time and work, we're talking about 20 million here. I would think that it's quite expensive. Well, but I would wait for you to complete your internal assessment. All right, I would extend the meeting by not more than 15 minutes just to let Mr. Stanley Ng ask his question. Mr. Stanley Ng. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be brief. we understand that a lot of the projects under CWRF involves the livelihood of the public, but we really want money to be well spent and worthwhile. My question is, how much of the allocation is on uncompleted projects from previously? How is the implementation and execution of previous projects? We don't want to see many projects still ongoing, yet we are approving allocation for new projects. When we talk about the Taiwan, Hong Kong East, on the roundabout, many people often complain about the roundabout, that there is no anti-skid road. This has still not yet been completed, yet more allocation is being asked for other projects, because people then might question the cost efficiency of these allocations.
So for the progress of the ongoing items, to what extent have they been sort of completed, Ms. Law? Well, I'll be brief. Chair, in relation to public works projects, we would like to have $14 billion, out of which we are covering 13,000 works projects. 12,000 are actually ongoing items that is either started within the current year or the years before, and they accounted for 85% of the funds to be allocated. So most of them have been started. As to the sort of percentage of completion, well, they vary. But then if I am to make a general comment, about half of them, that is half of the 13,000 projects, are still ongoing. But maybe I can defer to the Highways Department for a specific question asked by Mr. Ng. Yes, Mr. Ng, please. Thank you, Mr. Ng, for your concern concerning Chai Wan Road. As to the details of individual projects, I can take up the matter with you after the meeting. But let me give a general comment. If you talk about anti-skid materials, the current state of art is such that the anti-skid materials cannot last for decades. When vehicles run on the surface, the materials will be worn out, and it will also be affected by heavy rain. We'll try as much as possible to repair them, but then when we have seen large areas being torn off, then we will repair them on a larger scale. So you may have the impression that we are repeatedly repairing the road surface. If we can identify new materials, we'll give it consideration. For the specific case in Chai Wan, I will take up the matter with Mr. Ng afterwards. Well, year in, year out, you ask us to give approval to new projects, but please let us know about the progress of the items so that we can be assured that you have been working effectively. Yes, some items might have been completed, so please give us a clear idea that they have been completed. Maybe the bureaus can consider this a suggestion. Well, for the CWRF paper, it involves a large number of items. So I have set aside sufficient time for members to ask your questions. But then, of course, this is a very important paper covering many items, and they will have a bearing on the construction industry. Therefore, we would like to spend as much time as possible. And in fact, this subcommittee is going to have an additional meeting to deal with the rest of the paper. Sometime in the first half of February 2025, we are going to add an additional meeting. We'll be informed of the details of the additional meeting date by the Secretariat. So meeting adjourned, and let's resume next time if you still have questions on this paper. Thank you.